the time of 7 p.m. and the presence of a quorum, I bring this meeting of the Boxborough Finance Committee to order. We'll do a roll call vote. So if you state your name and present, starting with Joe.
Stolpen, present.
And Maria.
Nealand, present.
And I believe John is on. John Grieven. You state your name and present, please. You're muted.
You know what?
John.
Hold on a second. Is he a co-host? Okay, here I'm gonna hold on. I don't know if they can unmute right now. Can you unmute?
There we go. All right. Yep. Yeah. Grevin, present.
And Michelle.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry.
I think I was silenced.
I didn't mean to. I was trying to unmute you.
Ryan, present.
Okay, and I remember now John said he wouldn't make it tonight. He's got a family commitment. So I'll also note here we have Rajon Hudson, Assistant Town Administrator. We have Honghua Lee, Town Finance Director. Liz Folks from the School Committee. Gary Kushner, of course, and Susan Back from the Boxborough News. I think it's all who are online at the moment for the group. So first thing is the minutes of November 18. Are there any comments or issues with the minutes? I'll take a motion to approve.
Wait, Gary's got his hand up.
Comment? You have your hand up, Gary. Can we unmute Gary?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a typo in the minutes. Maria, I apologize. I misspelled your name. I corrected it already, but
we didn't even notice, but thanks.
It was right at the bottom. It was the last line or second last line in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so a motion to approve from somebody?
So moved.
And seconded? So moved by Maria, seconded by Joe Stolpen. So we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start here on the far left of my screen, which is actually Maria now. Maria?
Neil and I.
And who we got over here? Michelle?
Ryan, I.
Grieven?
Grevin, I.
Joe Stolpen?
Stolpen, I.
And Newton, I. Okay.
Tony, I had one thing I noticed I just happened to be reviewing the minutes from the 4th, and in the initial part it says I'm there, and then below it said I was not there, and I wasn't, but in the lower part it says that I was present during the roll call vote. So I just wanted to make that correction to the November 4th minutes.
So you were not there on the 4th?
I was not there, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, Gary, can you make a note of that?
I will check that.
Okay, thank you. Citizens' concerns? I'm seeing. Oh, I have a hand up. Elizabeth. Liz. Oh. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you.
Unmute, Liz.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So Adam has been giving the school committee these lovely little summaries, and I just feel like it's a good time to, just put it in there. So at our meeting on the 20th, because we met 2 days after you guys, and then our next one's not until right after this meeting as well. So we did look over the annual enrollment report. Overall numbers decline across the district. We reviewed the FY25 budget guidelines and confirmed that we're targeting an operating increase between 3.75 and 4.25 range to the operating budget, even though this is going to require reductions from level services. So we also noted that this is actually a wider gap than what we've had in previous years. So it's actually going to be more significant cuts than there were even last year because of just the skyrocketing costs that we can't control. And then we had our legislators visit, which was pretty interesting. We did discuss the Chapter 70 formula, kind of the slowness at which everything goes. And the legislators really encouraged the committee to submit testimony at, some of these listening sessions that are coming up as well. So we're going to continue to be active in trying to get the formula re-looked at and get increased state funding and more on that for what advocacy we may be able to do.
Okay, thanks. When does the first pass of the budget come out, Liz? School budget?
Let me double check and
think-
get back to you on that.
I think it's like after you guys make a decision.
Yeah, it's definitely after we
January.
make
It's
the
like
decision.
late January, right? Yeah, because they're going to make a decision on the whole whatever option and then be able to put that into the budget.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really late January.
Because it's
in the
really-
20s, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Liz.
Yep.
So next topic is reserve fund transfers. I've received no reserve fund transfers. Nothing from you, Honghua, on that?
Nope.
So FY26 budget. So last week we went, Maria and I were at the select board meeting and heard the tax classification hearing from our interim town assessor. And I sent the actual numbers out today with the materials for the meeting. But I'll share what I've got for that, which is I went ahead and did a comparison, side-by-side comparison of what we have, what we had modelled for FY26 and what actually got submitted to the Department of Revenue. So these are the actual numbers, if you like, that come through. So if you look at the column G and column H, column G is what we modelled, column H is what we actually submitted to DOR. So some notable differences if you go down. So new growth revenue is lower than we had estimated, slightly $9,000 lower, but the trend is not good. Also, there is no excluded debt in that calculation. I think that's correct. I think the debt we were excluding has all been paid off now. So although we actually and I've got a message in there to confirm this, but I believe that's the case. In which case we had allowed for excluded debt in our maximum allowable levy, which was not there. So the maximum allowable levy is actually about $1 million less than we had modelled in our model. The levy ceiling is slightly lower based on the fact that the town valuation is slightly lower than we have modelled. And actually the growth in the town was actually 2.7% growth in the town rather than 5%, which is what we had modelled. So it's lower overall town value and lower new growth. So the actual calculation then for the tax rate is slightly different than we had. It's 15.39 versus 15.06, and the average tax per house is slightly higher than we had estimated based on a higher house valuation, average house valuation that he had in his calculation. So not too far out, but the sort of concerning thing, I think, and the bullet we've dodged here is that the levy limit and the actual levy are only about $150,000 apart. So we were very close to that levy limit with this year's budget.
So, Tony, you're saying that the 885 fell off in FY25 going into 26.
Yeah.
But didn't we budget for that? For debt? Don't we have a budget number for
I don't think there's any
FY26?
excluded debt in the budget this year. I think it's just debt. So whatever was excluded for previous excluded debt, I don't know what they were. They're back in history somewhere. Is it school stuff? Maybe, I don't know.
So then we should have seen a drop on the excluded debt. That doesn't like a significant drop.
Well, as I say, I've got a message into Jim to see if we can figure out where that would appear on that chart that the numbers he gave us, which I sent out this afternoon. And maybe if there is some there, but the number that he's using is this number here. So that math adds up with you if you do the 2.5%, add in the new growth revenue, you get to his number basically. So I don't think he's including any excluded debt in his calculation.
If we do the 2% and add new growth,
Yeah.
I thought, I don't know. I just would think that we would have seen this $800,000 debt fall off in our budget. Even whether it's excluded or not, we budget, we have debt
Well,
in our,
we budget for debt servicing, not for debt itself.
but don't you think that if we weren't going to service 885,000, we would know that?
It's the amount we're paying for debt servicing has gone down actually over time. So yes, we've seen that go down.
Maria?
Yeah.
Sorry. Isn't this is listed as excluded debt outside of 2.5?
Yeah.
So library's now off. The question is there anything that we have outside of 2.5 that's still there? And that's is that what you're talking about?
We know that. We know what debt we have because we got, look at the dashboard.
Well, we have debt, but most of our debt's inside of 2.5. It's part of our operating budget.
Right, but it doesn't matter because we report the debt. The only time we worry about excluded or not excluded is when we're doing modeling to figure out what our debt levy is or what our levy limit is.
Right.
I mean, it just seems like a big number. Like you see how it like kind of casually went down 23, 24, then it went down in 25. The official number.
Right. So I mean, I think it's worth asking the question.
Yeah.
And I only really spotted it this afternoon when I was going through the numbers here. So I've got to put a message into Jim to ask that question.
Hung-Wah has her hand up.
Hung-Wah, do you have a question? Do you have a comment?
This is the treasurer, the DE1. She just entered this info in the gateway just last week. So I can send you that info. The total she put it in there is $724,960 for FY26.
Excluded debt?
As excluded debt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense in terms of these numbers here. So it's gone that much. So then I need to go back and check with Jim on his numbers then, because I think he's not included then that debt in his calculation. As I see it.
Oh, well, can you repeat the number again, please?
724,960. 724,960.
Thank you.
Yes.
So
that makes me feel better. At least we're accounting for it somewhere.
Yeah, that also sense, means right? that number would be into the gap between the levy limit and the levy. So it means we had about $1 million of
which is where we thought we were.
Where we thought we were, yeah.
So I don't really know why, unless we've been reporting it wrong. Yeah, you got to talk to Jim about that because that should be somewhere you think, unless he doesn't report it on his form, his classification form, but it's still included in the levy calculation.
Brings us to 28,196,591, which would imply that he is not using it in that calculation.
Right.
I'll have to just check on that. Maybe I'm making a mistake somewhere myself. So I mean, I'll check on that with him directly.
He might not use it because that is normally under the treasurer collector's office. So like Hung-Wah said, if a person was going to submit it, it would be our treasurer collector.
Except this form that we got this information off is specific to the tax rate, right? It's a tax classification. And that 724,000 should be in that $15 number, 15.39.
Well, no, not necessarily. All it's in is it's in the levy limit number. It's not in the tax calculation. It's not an expense. It's just an amount you can allow in your levy limit. The levy.
It's in the budget. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to get it right. But
yes, because that's a huge difference.
Yeah. And it won't affect the levy limit next year because the levy limit is based on the previous year, which is the top line there, not on the excluded debt number. So as it goes down, that won't affect the actual 2.5% levy limit.
Right, sense? but if we're missing $1 million or $700,000, right? I mean,
Well, it just means that the submission would have been wrong if that's correct. But I'm not, I'm not saying he's wrong, but I mean, it's something we don't understand here, I think.
Yeah. But for us and for modeling, that's a significant difference for us within that levy limit and what we'd be looking for an override.
Yes, because next year we need to, it'll be probably like 600,000 or something.
Yes.
That'll be part of our levy limit.
Right.
So yeah. So it's important for that reason as we model out going forward what our levy limit is going to be for next year.
And the FY 23-24 numbers, those are actual DOR numbers off that form?
Yeah.
So we've been reporting it to the state with those numbers included.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Yeah, I must have got it. Yeah, that came from the gateway, right?
Right, if that came from the gateway, then we need to figure out. Now, the thing is, it could be reported differently. The treasurer could report it, and then when they go into the gateway, maybe they do something to verify, but that's what we need to figure out. But as long as these other numbers have come through the gateway, at least we know that we've been looking at the maximum levy properly.
Right. Yeah.
Gary also has his hands up.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the assessed value. Anybody understand why we dropped $40 million in assessed value of the town?
Did he talk about that? I don't remember him mentioning.
We didn't drop, Gary. We went from 25 to 26. We actually increased it.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at FY26 model. Number. Sorry, model versus.
So it just grew less. It grew by 2.7%. We modeled 5%. So we overestimated the actual growth of the property values in town, which is a question I actually asked the assessor at the meeting at Select Board. Was, are we up to date with our property assessments and value assessments in town? If we haven't grown that much, he thought we were okay. So in other words, are the values of houses being captured correctly in this number?
So is there any way that we can get a more solid number from the assessor for FY27 as we start budgeting and get the reports together? Not solid, but like more of a make sure we're checking these numbers and they make sense, right? As we do this, I guess, because we only went up 2.5%, but we showed it a 5% increase because we've generally, when we do our budgeting we've always used that 5% on the average, on the value. Yeah,
we could consult with him, couldn't we, and say, what should we put in here for an estimate? Yeah. Based on what you're seeing.
Right, because he's seeing stuff come across his desk. When it gets recorded and stuff. So that's, he's understanding what's moving and what the values are doing in Boxborough.
Right. So, yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. We should do that. I mean, I think we just, this is all in a way fine tuning, right, of our system that we haven't really had before.
Yeah. It's concerning. It makes me nervous.
Okay. Any more questions on this one? Okay. Next topic about the 26 budget is an update on the bands situation. Here we go. So this is an update of the slide I showed for the last dashboard with the current new ban that was taken out in November of this year, and where we now stand in terms of what's been banned prior to a bond being issued, and what's still outstanding as being voted but not yet. We haven't yet taken out the loan. So couple things to note here. One is on the top line, the ATM 22 road maintenance, that's gone down because we paid off 37,500 in principal on that loan, which we had to do because of the time that passed since the ban was taken out. So that's gone down, that number. You'll also see that for ATM 2024 road maintenance, that money has not been taken out yet. but the 25 has been taken out. So I'm not quite sure why one and not the other, but the reason it's not been taken out in 24 is that apparently Ed used money he had from elsewhere, from the state, for that road maintenance in that year. So did not need that money, basically. Mike's telling me.
Which is fine. It just doesn't make sense why we would skip that year. I mean, you know what I mean? You should be taking it in the order. Otherwise, we have stuff hanging out there for longer. Yeah,
and I think that may be a treasurer question, frankly. So we essentially have 300,000 that we have voted and didn't need to use in that year. So the question might be, do we need in the next town meeting to take another 300,000, or can we use that 300,000 for the 26 road maintenance? That would save us a chunk of money in the budget.
Yeah.
Would that need to be a warrant article to move it from one to the other? A warrant article?
No.
No.
He can just use it for the roads. The way it's written is it's for road maintenance. It just happens to be voted in 2024, but he can use it for whatever year. We would just basically skip a year.
Okay.
On this. I guess I don't understand because there's roads that we have that are pretty atrocious. So I'm not understanding why we're not using all of the road maintenance money as it becomes available.
That culvert work we talked about a long time ago.
We talked about it last year. We had, because we talked about it a year ago because we had the ARPA money, and that was kind of the balance. We were using ARPA money for that, and that was the balance. I think that culvert, if I'm not mistaken, is the one that I might be wrong, over on Liberty.
Liberty's where, but it was never done, right? It's not been done.
Yeah, but again, why are we not doing these projects? We're getting the money out for them, but we're voting, and they're not actually banning. I guess we're not spending interest.
Voting it, but we voted it and haven't actually used the money. So I think it's a question for Ed at Budget Saturday, actually.
Yeah. And so what would we do? Just not bring another warrant article to perhaps next year if we still have money, right? Because we seem to have one of these every year to do the roads and stuff. So
I think we've got a year bonus. I think we don't need to do
so we just would bring one to the next annual in May or whatever. We still have the money. Potentially. I'm not saying we don't, but
Yeah. There's no point voting money that we're not going to use. If we've got money there that's already voted, that's usable.
For long term, Maria mentioned why not use it and do more roads. I remember Ed mentioning that the cost of the roads is skyrocketing because they're petroleum based, and all the materials and basically everything that goes into the roads is so expensive. So could it be advantageous in a long term strategy to use some earlier than rather than stick to the three, since we already have it, sticking to 300,000 every year, we could get ahead on something that.
I think it's a question for Ed at Budget Saturday. Michelle, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have more of like a tactical question. As things like this, like the DPW chunks of money gets used, is that something we check once a year? Do we have like visibility in that in ClearGov? Like as things happen, how often do we check in on these?
We don't, until we see a ban's been taken out, we don't know whether he has spent that money or not, I don't think.
Except for now, because Tony's been working on this financial dashboard. So now we have a clearer picture. We could check on this quarterly if we wanted to, right, Tony?
We could do, yeah.
Yeah, because, Michelle, before we didn't have any of this transparency at all. And Tony's created a lot of this. So I think we could look at this quarterly if we wanted to.
Yeah, I was just thinking it could be a really cool.
I'm not sure what's going to change there, because if we're not going to take out a new ban on any of this stuff until next year now, I don't think.
Well, but why not? We could pull the trigger at any time. So if, for instance, the fire engine replacement, right, the 1.2 million, that's voted. We will trigger that ban or bond, whatever, when it comes off the initial assembly line before it goes to be upfitted. We need to pay for it. So if that happens in April, then that's when we would trigger the bond, because we have to pay for it in April.
So maybe we would take new bans in between each year.
Yeah.
Okay. In which
It would
case,
be
then we should
these
keep,
bands. They would just move over, right?
In which case, we should look at this dashboard then every quarter, as you say,
Yeah.
and get updates from Honghua.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely sizable chunks of cash. So I feel like it'd be good to just kind of keep tabs on what to expect on a quarterly basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Gary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure you care, but the capital plan does include the road plans for the next about 6 or 7 years, with the amounts planned for each one.
Does it have the actual roads?
Amounts planned for the next 3 years, if you're interested in seeing it.
But if they find money elsewhere for those roads, what happens then? Like, what Ed's saying to us is that there's money from the state he could use for.
Well, there's two sources of income for roads: Chapter 90 and the money we bond at a town meeting.
Right. Okay. It still seems strange to me that money is there that he hasn't used, and
so if he's doing small road maintenance, right? He's going to use the Chapter 90 money because that comes in. We vote to accept it every year. That's that thing that we vote to accept every year. That's in an account that can only be used for road maintenance. So if he's just if he's filling cracks and doing something like that, potholes, he's taking it out of that money. This was put into place so that we could bump that up and we would be able to pave long stretches of roads. And that's where I'd like to understand what are we doing here? Because we have money, and what is the schedule to start paving some of these roads?
I think they do.
And again, I have that in the capital plan if you want to see it.
Gary, is it by street? So does it say Hill Road will be done?
Yes.
Yeah, next year's Middle Road, right? And this year with Burrows, they just finished.
Middle Road is FY27 along with Cobley.
Mm-hmm.
This year, FY26, he only did Codman Hill.
I thought we did Burrows too.
Burrows was previous year, FY25.
And does it have dollar amounts next to those?
It does.
So what does next year look like? Can you just
FY27, he's looking to spend almost 438,000 between Cobley and Middle.
So he's got 600,000 here plus whatever he's got from the state, and he gets around at least this much from the state every year. So Tony, maybe it's Capital Saturday. We talked to Ed about this, and maybe he needs to come in and tell us what his Chapter 90 funds look like.
Yeah. I did reach out to Ed. I'll try to connect with him before Capital Saturday if possible.
That'd be good.
Don't expect to hear from this week with the snow, but we'll see.
Okay, so I'm keeping track of questions for Budget Saturday and Capital Saturday. And so that question is, Joe, what is this plan? But more importantly, what is the Chapter 90 fund balance that he has?
Okay.
Right. Okay, good.
Hongwa's got her hand up.
Oh, Honghua, go ahead.
I remember last year we received money. Chapter 70 came in around $76,000.
How much?
76,000.
That was for Chapter
90. Here's the exact 76591.
So that's not a lot of money.
That's not much. Yeah, that's not much.
So Gary, is that why we started doing the 300?
Yeah, I think there's some questions for Ed about the whole spending program, I think, on this. And
Yeah, Chapter 90 sounds low. It used to be almost equal, 50-50.
That's what I thought too.
I thought we were running closer to Chapter 90 was like 200 and change last year.
Yeah. So maybe Ed can give us a history on that, but more importantly, what's he got sitting in this fund balance?
Unless we get multiple payments over the course of a year.
Maybe.
I don't know how it comes in.
Okay.
So next topic then is the FY27 budget. So had a meeting with the select board last week about the budget strategy. Actually, I'm going to share. Let me just stop this and share a different presentation. Actually, give me a minute. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just to remind everybody, these are the budget guidelines that we had sort of come down to. Well, I think, have you all seen this one? I think we discussed it last time we met, this version of the budget guidelines. It was like a streamlined version of what we had originally talked about. So two budgets, A budget and B budget. A assuming the override passes and B assuming the override fails. What Mike is positioning this as level services and level funded within his guidance to the town. We're looking at 5.5% or less, and 2% or less for B. For the A budget, freezing positions, hours, and salary adjustments, within the contracts and CBA limitations. And B would mean reductions to meet the target. And then for warrant articles, minimal, but we will do some with bonding and free cash. So share this with the select board as well as the budget strategy, which is this here, these bullet points here, which is we'll continue our line by line scrutiny of the budget, maintain the levy limit increase up to a 5.5% target, operate within our financial policies, and the idea that we would anticipate an override every 10 to 20 years, so sort of plan for that, and then fund major capital investments by bonding. So we discussed these with the select board, and first, at the end of the process, actually, not in the beginning, but that the select board voted to accept the budget guidelines and the strategy with actually no modifications. So that was good, I think, that we're aligned in terms of what we're trying to do. The other point discussed was that the first pass of budgets will be available next week from the town. So next time's meeting on the 16th, we'll be able to have a first look at those budgets, and I'll send them out as soon as I get them, of course. One of the topics we talked about was the level services budget A, and the 5.5% increase. So one of the contradictions in that is the fact that we have said level services, but we don't really know whether level services is 5.5% or some other number. So that was a question from the select board to say, well, what is a true level services budget look like? And so it's something that Mike is working on to get back to us. I also noted at the meeting that we're not all agreed on 5.5%. There was pretty strong pushback from the FinCom on a lower target than 5.5% even for the A budget. So I'm just recognizing that is not fully agreed yet. Budget B level cost, which means effectively less than 2%. We noted obviously significant healthcare, which is about 20% apparently increases, and pension increases for both budgets. So that will impact other parts of the budget that are not able to increase. There's a discussion point about what should the budget target be for the school. Should the A be based on the Boxford assessment or the actual school budget increase? And I think there's disagreement within FinCom, I know, and probably within Select Board about which number you give the school. Do you give them 5.5% as a budget target, or do you give them 5.5% as an assessment target? So we discussed that at the last meeting. So that's still, I think, an open discussion topic. And the school committee do request clarification what the B budget target is as soon as possible, so they can work on their B budget. And we also recognise that some of these targets may have to change based on the first pass of the budgets as we sort of move through the process. So those are all the, I think, discussion points we had with the select board. Just throw it open for comments and discussion. Or if not, we'll move on.
It's awfully quiet.
Yeah. That 20% healthcare increase, I mean, like thinking about that with level funding, I mean, where do you pull that amount? I mean, because healthcare is one of the largest costs and one of the largest increases on that cost.
Mm-hmm.
So what? How do you?
So it means other parts of the budget
create a
have
level
to go down.
services or level cost with that?
Yeah, other parts of the budget have to go down to absorb that cost, because that line of the budget has to go up. Yeah, that can't change. So the other parts will need to be lower.
So that's a town manager decision, or I mean, we give guidance and vote on when they bring it to us, but who puts the things on the chopping block?
The health.
We do. Well, no.
Well,
we give them a target number.
Right, and then once they bring it, we say yes or no. But I mean, who makes the actual decisions on if we give the guidance that it has to stay level cost, and then there is a 20% increase in the healthcare? I mean, I'm just curious, like who?
Well, it's level cost. It's level cost overall, right? Or it's level services overall. You know, it's 5.5% overall. So what Mike has to do is look at the budget, and he knows that line he can't change. Therefore, the next line he has to move down more. You know, can't be 5.5%. It needs to be a 2% increase to sort of, you know, do the math on that. So that's the challenge. He has to sort of put together that combination, I think, and present to us,
right,
for us to actually then review that.
What level of granularity are we going to expect from the first pass? Like, is this down to line item, or is this just like buckets?
Line item it will be in ClearGov, Michelle.
Okay, so we'll have full like visibility into what was changed, and we can compare apples to apples with A and B.
Yep, you'll have last year's number for each line item. You know, there'll be salary line items. There'll be, you know, program line items in there with last year's amount and this year's amount.
And should we expect like anecdotal information, like say, you know, budget A has a line item for 1 million and budget B has a line item or the same line item for 500K? Is there going to be anecdotal info on like why and like what we're missing if we go to budget B?
Don't know how they could present that. I mean, there were comments on each line, I think.
Okay.
Or they can put comments on each line.
Yeah, in ClearGov, they have where you can put comments and notes on any changes for any of the budget line items. And we've been meeting with department heads this week, and they've been explaining some of the changes. And also, we've been making additional comments on each of the line items. So you should have access to that information.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And that should all be there now, actually, Michelle, in ClearGov. You got a ClearGov. I haven't actually myself yet.
I was just logging in to try to take a peek at that, but I thought I'd just ask.
Yeah, I wasn't going to look until it's sort of final, but I think it's pretty close now. Okay, any other comments, questions, thoughts? Well, I guess we'll have a first look at it next meeting on the 16th. We'll have the budget.
So that's the question. Is anyone going to the next meeting, and should Tony post a quorum?
I mean next FinCom meeting.
Right, but it's being presented on Monday night, right? At the select board meeting.
Select board.
So if anyone wants to go.
Yeah.
I plan to be there.
Right.
Whether in person or on Zoom.
I think I should go as well, I guess.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to go to the select board on Monday to hear it presented for the first time, feel free, but let me know, because if we can be more than 3 of us there, we need to post a quorum.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to hear the comments from the select board, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next topic is the fire station building committee.
Oh, that's me. Okay. So I think last we spoke, we still hadn't disclosed the address of the property, that new piece of property we were looking at. So at our last meeting, which was 2 nights after we met, we made that property public. So that property is 984 Mass Ave. It was the worst kept secret in Boxborough. I realized this, but and it's the Tree Master's property next to Mark White's property. And so at that point, we had an awful lot of pieces of property on the, on our list. So we voted essentially to keep the top three. And what we ended up keeping, and this is somewhat in order of what, actually, it's not in any particular order. We ended up keeping 984 Mass Ave, which is that piece of property Tree Masters has, 1300 Mass Ave, and 72 Stowe Road. We took off the 502 because we had gotten more numbers on the swing space, and there were some people in the community that said our numbers were wrong. They were way too high for the swing space at about 3.7 million. Mike got numbers and had proposals from the two companies that residents had told him to check, and he came in at over $4 million. So that number went up, not down. So we took 502 off because the programming doesn't work well on that property. And the swing space just added $4 million that was then basically, you could burn it in a fire pit and it would be equivalent. Because once we were done building, we just take the swing spaces down, give the tents back, and we had nothing to show for it. So the swing space didn't lend anything because the project wasn't great on 502. So we voted to take that off. We voted to remove the Mass Ave property, 750, 800 Mass Ave, which was that blue house near the construction road. And we voted to take off the 2 Middle Road properties. So the properties that we've kept, those 3 properties that we kept, there's a cost for every one of those properties. The cost basically ranges from 1.2 million at the lowest cost for a piece of property to up to about 4.5 million at the highest cost of the property. And then there's one that falls kind of in between. So there will be a cost for property. And at the moment, what we're doing is we're doing engineering work, test borings, environmental stuff on 984 and 1300. So to get that information, and then we will hopefully be making a decision on how we're going to go forward to town meeting. I think it might be that we have a meeting on Thursday night. I think it's this Thursday, and if it's not this Thursday, it's our following meeting. We just have to wait we're trying to make the deadlines, but at the same time, we have to wait for the environmentals and all the test borings and everything else, the engineering reports to come in. And really, that's pretty much what we talked about. We just we're kind of in a holding pattern until we understand better all the different engineering reports, and then we go from there.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions? It is still our intention to go to a March 9th meeting, I think it is, with an ask for design funds and property purchase. And depending on where we land with respect to, if we end up with the most expensive and the least expensive, we're going to bring 2 pieces of property forward. But, it depends on where we land. It would ideally bringing 1 piece of property forward would be the best thing to keep it, simple, but we may need to give the town some choices. So
yeah.
Great. Okay. That is our plan.
Thank you. School committee, John's not here, so I don't know updates from him. Unless Liz, you want to say anything about the strategic options updates? Do you have any more insight for us?
So I do know that they're meeting tonight to kind of codify what they had discussed 2 weeks ago, which was the removal of those additional options, the ones that were more, like the outliers. Yeah. And one thing that they're discussing tonight, which I'm going to be interested to see, is whether they present 3 or 2 options to the school committee. So more to come on that because they're literally meeting right now.
And they are discussing and voting very soon, apparently. There's a few people who have texted me and said they're about to vote. So we'll know in a few minutes.
I do know that the communities in town, both parents and just community members alike, have still been providing feedback to the school committee, and we're very appreciative of it. I don't think I've ever read so many emails in my school committee email, but I'm doing it. I'm reading them all. Yeah, no, it is.
It's a really big deal for families, especially a lot of, 2 schools, Blanchard and Conant, right? Those are the 2 most affected schools. So, and the box community at all.
And I got to say, recently we, as the school committee, got the opportunity to tour all of the elementary schools, and it was really cool, especially seeing like we saw the same lesson taught like 4 different places in 4 different ways, which I thought was really interesting. But it's just really nice. We do have, 6 very distinct communities within town, and I don't envy future me at having to come up with something to propose to move forward with.
Great, thank you. Okay, next on topic is the just organisationally, the annual report I sent around for everybody. Please have a look at it and any comments you've got. Honghua, I will be coming to you with some help with numbers on that, make sure they're accurate as I work through that. You haven't seen that yet, but I've got some numbers I need to check with you at some point. That's due in January the 6th, I think. Calendar, I think tomorrow night we have the Boxborough Leadership Forum. Who's going to that?
I'm going.
I'm going to be there.
I really plan to, but I think I'm not going to be able to attend, or maybe partially attend, but maybe not.
Yeah.
We're posted for a quorum anyway, Tony, even if anyone else shows up.
Okay.
The one thing that is on that agenda, though, that everyone should be aware of is new growth and the problem we're having in town with new growth. And that, I think, is going to be a really important conversation for all of the boards, the school, because of the budgeting implications and everything else. So we'll have a lot to report back, hopefully.
Okay. Committee reports. John Green, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I got a couple brief updates quickly. Retcom didn't have too much other than they're going to CPC Thursday for the last part of kind of their phase 3 of 3 of all the playgrounds everywhere in Boxborough. The first was the smaller structures at Flara, which was, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Redid Liberty, and then the third is replacing the main aging structure at Flara as part of the 2030 master plan and get it into ADA compliance. So that's really kind of the last thing. And then hopefully there's no more playground updates or requests for like the next 20 years or so. They'll all be done. We haven't had a sustainability committee meeting since we last met, but I know there were a lot of questions about the swap shed and why is it closed and all that kind of stuff. So I did a little digging, and there actually is a page up on the transfer station that says, at least for now, to use, and I think this is why we needed a staff and volunteer, but I haven't, like I said, I had a chance to talk it over. You need to show a proof of residency to use the swap shed. So even folks who don't have a transfer station sticker can still go and use the swap shed. So I think they were checking those because I know Kate had mentioned that a few folks showed up that were from out of town or whatever, and she's like, no, you can't drop stuff off here. Or you need to, you got to live here to do stuff. But then also they're still helping people learn and understand the donations need to be approved by a swap shed volunteer before being left. And, depending on the condition of it, they could be refused, or there may just not be enough space in the shed or anything like that. So I think that's part of the reason they still just need volunteers there to keep it open. But that's just what's posted on the website right now. But after our next meeting, I'll also see if I can get any further details on that. And then the last thing I have, Water Resources Committee, I finally had a chance to meet with Les about that. The main takeaway from there is they are not going to ask for any money from us, which was great news to hear that. At least for this upcoming year, they're really focused on, so the Weston and Sampson report provided a really long list of, what is it here? 8 recommendations, but the main one they really want to focus on this year is developing educational materials for residents about their septic systems and well water testing, because a lot of folks who have moved into town or have lived here for a long time really, at least from what they've gathered, don't really know a ton about maintaining their septic system or how to test their well water and understand what's actually in it. So that's their main goal for now. But otherwise, no further updates from my committees.
Great.
Hold on, I have a question about sustainability. Last night on the planning board meeting, they did the climate change. There was a report that they did, like the climate change, almost a master plan. I forgot what they called it because I was cooking at the same time. It was really very interesting. It was kind of dense, but it would be great, John, if we could get a copy of that, because there's cost implications, not just for the residents, but for the town as well on some of this stuff they're looking to do. And I know they presented it to the planning board, they've presented it to the select board. If there's cost implications to the town, which you and I have talked about what those costs are, I really feel like we should at least look at it. It was a really interesting, Ian presented it last night, and I thought it was really interesting. They did a lot of work around it. That said, a lot of it is based on a survey. And my understanding is they had 140 people who responded to the said survey, and to make these they had listed like 10 or 12 maybe options that were big changes, pay as you go and all of this stuff. For 140 people, like that is not representative of our town. I don't think so. That was one of the questions that came up last night. But I think you should all at least see it, and if we want, maybe have them come in and talk to us about long-term costs on it, because I think that we have to be aware of the changes they're looking to make before it ends up in front of the town, and really understand the cost implications on their plan. So, okay, yeah, I can definitely look into that. Thanks.
Joe Stolpin.
Sure. I emailed Liz, the chair of the Conservation Commission, Liz Markowitz. Haven't heard back, but I did review the video from the meeting where they discussed the CPC application. So I have the rationale from their PowerPoint and their discussion. I invited comment from Liz if she wants to respond for anything else to share to us. But the primary rationales that they provided in their meeting to each other were the federal funding uncertainty. So with everything going on with the federal government and programs potentially being cut, more uncertainty on streams coming into them, just having more of a buffer to withstand any sort of turbulence there. They mentioned that the $10,000 limit that they've had has been the same since around 2018. So hasn't increased since then. Before, I think it had increased a few times, but it was always in a warrant article. So since they moved to the way they do it now through CPC, it's been $10K since 2018. They did mention that internally and informally, it's a 1 or 2 year request, sort of to bump up and do some work, but that after 1 or 2 years, they didn't expect to need to stay at that level. They identified readiness as part of that federal funding uncertainty. So they mentioned, identifying parcels, appraising them, acquiring them, if that's an option. Each of those things can cost $10,000 or more. So it's generally $10,000 to appraise a parcel. Acquisitions can be $10,000 to $20,000 on average. They also have to do map upgrades, which they believe they can use CPC funds for. And then the final point, which wasn't in the PowerPoint presentation, but that they kind of have had a revelation of during their conversation, was that their current open space and recreation plan expires in fiscal year 27. And in order to establish a new open space and recreation plan, it costs $20,000 to $30,000.
That's usually a warrant article. If they say they use these funds for it.
I'm not sure, but that was part of the rationale for why this year requesting a funding increase. They confirmed that the current trust fund balance is $46K, as was noted in our previous meeting, and that is the highest ever that it's been. But they believe that those other items were a positive rationale for the increase.
Joe, were they specific about? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, were they specific about, like, you mentioned that they're worried about federal or state aid getting cut. Were they specific about for what? Like, are they sustaining any programs right now that they would lose funding for, that they'd have to use the $46K for, or was it just like a general unease?
It was a little bit of both. There's definitely a general unease that was sort of, vague, but they do have several programs that are ongoing. I don't want to misspeak on the costs of them or the exact programs without it in front of me. But reviewing on the meeting, they did have, I thought they had a reasonable rationale. I come from a place where I conservation's in my heart as well. So, I'm trying to be very, balanced in my perception of these things, balancing our FinCom responsibility with the critical need to do conservation in a town like Boxborough. So personally, I think that it's a reasonable rationale. I'm waiting to hear comment from Liz, just for anything that wasn't part of that summary. But we'll see when it comes down, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it's definitely reasonable. I think what I'm after is right now we're being so fiscally aware of every single dollar that's, in and around Boxborough, even if it comes from CPC funds. I just want to be specific about what we're using things for, right? To me, this still comes off as like we're stashing away funds for something.
I think that's going to be sort of universal, I think we all know that there's some weird stuff going on, and there, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a balance we have to take on that. CPC conservation; those are sort of the things that go away when the feds cut programs. So,
but the funds would still be there in CPC, presumably. Right. It's just where they're not earmarked for conservation. They're still there in the account somewhere for future use.
Yeah, I just think they typically use funds from elsewhere, and the 10K keeps them afloat. But
they shouldn't be afloat. They're part of they have a budget. This is supposed to be for emergency. This is the frustration I have with the increase. They have $46,000. This is supposed to be for Maria Nealand owns 100 acres of land and drops dead tomorrow. Her family wants to sell, and town meetings in 7 months. We got to start doing we want to jump on this property. That right. kind of. That's what I
mean. They mentioned if that does happen this year, it would cost $10,000 for an appraisal, $20K to acquisition, and then they have $15K left to do map upgrades and establish a new open space and recreation plan. So. I think they're just feeling a little bit squeezed, even though I don't think it's bringing anyone down to zero, and it's not dire. I think they have reasonable rationale in a vacuum, without taking into account that every other commission and board is also feeling that same squeeze. So I'm not. All I can do. I'm just the messenger. But I do. They had a good. I think they had a good rationale based on my understanding of the way that they presented it. So I'll look forward to connecting with Liz for more candid conversation.
Not picking on you at all, Joe. I'm trying to understand, it feels to me that there is urgency or there is something, and I'm trying to dig at what the something is. If they are seeing around a corner, that's great. I want to be able to see around that corner too. So I'm all for conservation, all for using the funds, but we need to be specific, because if we say, hey, we gave them an extra increase for something, I just want to be able to say what the something is, I think. So if you could keep us posted on whatever Liz comes back with, that would be super helpful. I'm sure I'll hear more on CPC on Thursday also, which is the public hearing. So
they're bringing this to CPC on Thursday.
Yeah, I expect us to have conversation on it.
So if I to paraphrase this, then what they're asking for is they want to build a fund up so that if something becomes available short term that we can't get to a town meeting, we can sort of opportunistically pick up a piece of property for conservation.
We can't do that. The town, they're not allowed to buy property for conservation.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So what's it for?
Without a town vote. They just I think even if it's not bonded, and it is only the select board. They're a committee of the select board. The select board's the only one who can buy a piece of property. They don't even have the legal purview to buy a piece of property.
So what's the money for then? That's what I'm trying to understand. Is right. What's this float for? And why can't it just stay in the CPC funds until it's needed? And again, I'm not picking on you, Joe, because you're just a messenger bringing the news back. But I'm just trying to
you're the messenger both ways.
Understand what it is they're looking to do.
Yeah.
Do we understand what they typically do with the 10,000? Because it's probably that plus the other items I mentioned.
Yeah.
My guess is Gary understands because he stood up for years and said no to it. Gary, do you have any input?
He's still there.
I will say that when we originally created the fund, it was only for if a piece of property came up, they had to do some assessment. And it could be $5,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 to do the assessment, whatever the number was. So we created the fund with $5,000 each year. As Joe said, sometime around 2018, they bumped it to 10,000. I got up in stage floor for the next 7 years and said, no, we agreed on 5,000 just to create this basic fund. I got overruled every year. I finally gave up about 2 years ago. It's not a slush fund. It's not supposed to be a slush fund. It's supposed to be there just in case, again, a piece of property comes up. And for the road, the survey that you just talked about, Joe, the land and recreation.
Open space.
I think Maria said that should be a warrant article.
Yeah.
Anything like that, purchase land. If you remember, we bought land last year for $1 on Summer Road, but they had to go to town meeting to do that. It's not up to,
you mentioned that this
can't
year
buy
they
land
did,
without approval.
I think they did 3 acquisitions this year, if I recall, and they mentioned based on their constraints, they expect if next year if there were similar opportunities, they would maybe only be able to do one of those.
They may have through the trust. The trust is a separate organization that does have money.
Okay, yeah,
that's not a town organization. That's a private organization.
Because the only land we bought was for $1 for recreation was Summer Road. So if land was purchased, Joe, it was through the trust, which is, again, Mir just said, that's a private group.
Yeah. I mean,
and just a process question. I mean, as FinCom, do we get to weigh in on this as CPC funds? We still get to weigh in. Right?
I mean, I'll be there on Thursday weighing in on fiscal responsibility.
Just in general, though, Maria,
not as FinCom, I don't think.
Yeah, so we can't tell CPC how to spend their funds, but Michelle, we've had members on the FinCom who have been members on CPC who, because the FinCom said, we're not going to support this on town floor, voted against certain things. And Michelle, I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying, so like, for instance, Steel Farm, FinCom has never been 100% supportive of all the Steel Farm renovations. So we had one member who was representing CPC that voted against it. We also will do a recommendation, and we can vote against it on the warrant, but we can't tell them how to spend their funds, and we shouldn't because that's their thing. There is, I think Michelle might know for sure, there is definitely a conservation bucket. There's different buckets. There's unrestricted CPC funds, and then there's conservation, recreation, historical.
Yep, that's right.
Right. So they have a bucket of money that they can spend, but it does not mean that money doesn't go away. It's going to remain in that bucket. So if this year it's 10,000 and they don't touch it, next year it's 10,000 more, it's $20,000. That bucket is always going to be there for them. So
I think that's why they were saying, 1 or 2 year. They said they didn't want to put that in their request because they didn't want to be stuck to it in case they, needed to stay at that higher level beyond the 2 years. But that, anecdotally, internally, they were presenting it and proposing it as a 1 or 2 year increase just to kind of get a buffer. The section of this PowerPoint was called Strengthening the Conservation Trust. And it did mention that the Sudbury Valley Trust provided regional guidance on this. So it is coming from somewhere other than just fear.
But this isn't, the problem is this isn't a trust. This is a conservation commission for the town. The Boxborough Conservation Trust is a private entity. Sudbury Valley Trustees is a private entity. And so the trustees can put forward whatever guidance, but they're not a municipal agency. And so you need to, the Conservation Commission is a municipal agency. And I think that's where I understand what you're saying, but that's where I have some reservations around this. Because they got guidance to create themselves a fund that they shouldn't have that much money in a fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking at the application. I don't see any updates based on the original application. And you're right, Maria. It's open space, recreation, community housing, and historic resources. This one is lumped into open space, but candidly, the granularity is not there. So I fully expect to have this discussion on the floor on Thursday. And spoiler for my update, CPC is having their public hearing on Thursday where we're going to be talking about the things I mentioned a couple weeks ago, which is the Conservation Commission, cemetery restoration, schoolhouse number 2, the playground, and the town hall roof. So we're going to be openly chatting about them, and I'm assuming voting on those on Thursday.
Which I don't think I'm misunderstanding, but it seems like even in this PowerPoint, it's conflated a bit between the CPC request and the trust fund.
Yeah,
they
that's what I'm
literally say
thinking.
strengthening the conservation trust fund. So
Phil, last time we gave John Grieven a hard time over the swap shed. This week we're giving you a hard time.
Your turn.
Let's go back to the swap shed.
So it's sort of balancing out over time. So don't feel bad. Okay,
No worries.
Michelle, as you're speaking, you can give your updates as well.
Yeah, that was my main update. I think we already touched on, but like the EDC received the state grant and they're putting together their economic development plan, or they intend to. So looking forward to staying involved in that. But my main entree this week is the CPC public hearing. So that's this Thursday, and you're all welcome to join if you'd like to hear more about these projects. Turns out playgrounds are just ridiculously expensive. So John, thanks for the diligence there. I was able to get the full packet, and we are getting as many discounts as we can, but it does look like with the dilapidation and we're not in compliance with several like ADA requirements, etc. And it was last updated in 1999. And as I think John, you mentioned, this is the last playground to be renovated. So coming around on how expensive playgrounds are, but still some open questions on the Conservation Commission specifically.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Maria.
Okay, Maria's like losing her voice. I have a couple things. If you give me 1 second. Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anyone want to tell
a joke too?
Okay. I went to the planning board last night, and this was, I don't know what number meeting, but it's been about a year. There was a Campanelli who owns Beaverbrook over by the old Cisco property, looking for their master plan to be able to bring in, basically are looking to get a master plan approval so they can start constructing buildings and build out the property. And shockingly or not, it was continued to January 12th, 2026. So that would make it almost a full year in the planning phase. They have spent the last 3 meetings with Campanelli talking about, last night, one of the planning board members wanted to know if they were going to fix up the basketball court and the fence because someone complained the fence was down, which isn't really, this is one of the reasons I think we're stalled on new growth, right? Because we have these people in these planning board, these meetings for this site plan approval that are taking, last week the guy was there, it was 8 months from Mass Ave. And then once the plan gets approved, there's a 120-day appeal process. So, you can't start construction tomorrow, even if your plan gets approved. So this is the type of thing, I think there was select board members on the meeting last night as well. That will be discussed tomorrow night at BLF, is new growth and everyone's kind of responsibility towards making sure that we're kind of staying steady and doing what we can to bring in revenue by redeveloping these properties that are in front of them. They also discussed the master plan changes. Tony, they didn't mention our change. It was a very quick conversation. I don't know if they took all the changes and they are going to vote on it down the line. It was just a joint meeting with the select board. And they're saying that the plan expires in 2030. Normally, it takes 2 years to put a plan together. So they're already talking about getting the money to go back out to get the Massive Planning Association to come and help us do a master plan that would go out 15 years from 2030. So that was that. The housing board is meeting tonight. I talked briefly with Joe today because I had some kind of senior moment and panic that he was actually the housing board rep and not me. But they're meeting tonight and they're talking about a housing plan, production plan, that's going to cost approximately $75,000. And they're talking about funding tonight, and there's 4 options, 2 of which is grant funding, that that reduces that number from 75 down to either 0 or 15,000, but delays the plan for a year. The other two options are some grant funding and the rest coming out of the trust, the Housing Board Trust. They do have a trust fund, and that is either 35,000 or 75,000. So depending on when we end, I may try to bop on there. It's not our purview per se, but if they run out of money in the trust, then we're going to have to start funding the affordable housing, because we have to, we have a board, we have a commission, and we're going to have to start making sure that affordable housing, we've been lucky over the years because we have this trust money that we've used. And then that also leads into them selling Stowe Road because they need that money. They only have somewhere between, I couldn't get an accurate number, $140,000 to $180,000 in the trust. So I suggested to the chair tonight, I emailed him and said, grants and a year delay with, grants with very little cost is much better than using half your trust fund when you have all these other programs. Because then, who's going to pick up the rental programs? They have a rental program. They have a HOPE program, which helps families that own the affordable housings maintain them through the years so that everybody, can be maintained. The houses can be maintained. And that would quickly run through the trust money. So that was as much as I have in that update. With respect to the schools, Kristen is going tomorrow to that hearing for the DESC. She emailed everyone today. Tony, are you going to that?
No, I'm going to.
Okay. She's going to that tomorrow. And for my understanding, and you can, I don't know, Liz, if you heard this too, but apparently option 5V1, which turns Blanchard into a preschool, has been taken off the table and voted unanimously to take that option off the table. So we will be keeping, apparently Liz did not hear this. I did ask 4 people who texted me, like this was the official vote, and they said yes, and you can report out to FinCom. So I don't know what other options are on the table, but that particular option, which I think was the biggest concern to Boxborough parents and Boxborough community, is now off the table. And that's all.
Great, thank you. So my two were just a select board, which we've already discussed, the tax hearing and the budget discussion. And then I went to personnel board and I presented them with the budget strategy and the budget options. And they're obviously quite concerned about that in terms of personnel planning, but they have an update on that now. So that is all we have, I think. Anything else from anybody? Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so roll call to adjourn. So Maria.
Neil and I.
Joe.
Slope and I.
John.
Brad and I.
Michelle.
Brian, I.
And Newton, I. So I declare the meeting officially adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank